So Hare Krishna, welcome to our Gita Gyan level 2. So let's begin our week 9 session today. So we begin with this Guru Pranam. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sagrajadam Sahagana Raguna Tanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitanscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vigna Vinashan Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namini Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vigna Vinashana Simhaiti Namini Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langaitim Girim Yatkripatamaham Vande Shri Guru Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Sri Chaitanya Mishwaram Om Tatsat Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So Hare Krishna, and we are discussing today the story from Gita Mahatmya. So Gita Mahatmya is a section in the Padma Purana. The section there is in the Uttarakanda section, chapters 175 to 192. So it's basically all glorification of each and every chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. So from chapter 1, so for the glorification, there is a story for each of these chapters. So we have already done chapter 1 previously. So now we will continue with chapter 2. So Goddess Parvati said to Lord Shiva, "My dear husband, you know all the transcendental truths. And by your mercy, I have heard the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna." And then she continues, "Oh Lord, how now I long to hear from you the glories of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, which was spoken by Lord Krishna. And by hearing which one's devotion to Lord Krishna increases." So this is the benefit of listening to these stories of the Gita Mahatmya, because it's very important for us to read and hear the Bhagavad Gita in the right mood. So the mood is very important, the correct faith and the correct attitude in listening to, just like how we can accept it in an academic, dry manner, or we can accept it, or we can hear it in a challenging, kind of a manner, or we can accept it with faith in a humble manner. So depending on the way we accept or hear the Bhagavad Gita, in that way, we will get the suitable benefit. And the best way to actually hear Bhagavad Gita is with devotion towards the Supreme Lord. And simply by hearing the story of the Gita Mahatmya, we can develop that devotion to the Supreme Lord. And when we hear Bhagavad Gita after that, then it will become sweeter. So that is one of the ideas of this Bhagavad Gita Mahatmya. So anyway, Lord Shiva here, he will comply to the request of Parvati Devi. He will start recounting the story of the Gita Mahatmya. But he recounts it as spoken by another person. That means Lord Shiva is telling Parvati about another conversation which took place between Lord Vishnu and Lakshmi Devi. So between them, there was a conversation, and in that conversation, the story of this glorification of the Gita takes place. So Sri Vishnu said, "My dear Lakshmi, you have heard from me the glories of the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita." So we have already heard previously, remember the story of Susharma, the bull and the parrot, right? So now, please listen carefully as I tell you the glories of the second chapter. So the story begins in this beautiful city of Pandharpur. So if you have gone to India before, Pandharpur is a famous place. It's nearby. The nearest famous city is Mumbai. So it's in the state of Maharashtra. And then there's Pune, and then from there you can go to Pandharpur. It's in the middle. So once this story takes place in Pandharpur, where there was a very learned Brahmana by the name of Devashama. So he lived there. So this is the city of Pandharpur. Pandharpur is a very famous place because it is next to the Chandrabhaga river. So the Chandrabhaga river is one of the holy rivers. And over there is the famous deity of Panduranga Vittala. So we must have heard sometimes, Panduranga. So this is the deity of Panduranga Vittala. Panduranga Vittala is Krishna standing in this way, the arms on his hips like that. So it's a very unique posture, and it's a very ancient deity. So this is one of the towers of that temple shrine. It's actually a big temple. This is just the part which connects to the river Chandrabhaga. And Lord Vittal also sits there with his consort, Rukmini Devi. So over there in Maharashtra, they call Rukmini Devi Rakumei. So Vittala, Panduranga Vittala and Rakumei together in this ancient city of Pandharpur. Yeah. So anyway, back to our story. So this Brahmana, Devasham, he was a very learned person, learned in the ritualistic aspect of the Vedas. That means he was well trained in how to perform rituals. So in the Vedas, there are 4 types of people who understand the Vedas. So the Vedas are divided into the Brahmana section, the what we call Samhita section, the Aranyaka section, and the Upanishad section, right? So the Brahmana section and the Samhita section of the Vedas is very much involved with rituals. So sometimes the Brahmanas will not know every part of the Veda. They will only specialize in certain aspects. So anyway, Devasham was very specialized in the ritualistic aspect, in the karma kanda, fruitive activities on how to perform various different rituals to please the devatas. But however, he was not very happy or peaceful in his heart and mind because he had the desire to attain the knowledge of the soul. So he wanted deeper knowledge besides just ritualistic knowledge. And where is this kind of knowledge given? It is given in the Upanishads, which is in the part of the Vedas And so he had this kind of desire to understand the relationship of the soul with the super soul or the Paramatma, the Atma and the Paramatma. What is the relationship between me and God? So this kind of knowledge is known as Sambandha Gyan. Gyan means knowledge. Sambandha means relationship. Now there are in spiritual life, particularly in the Upanishads and in the higher scriptures, there are three types of knowledge. The first type of knowledge is called Sambandha Gyan. First, we want to know who am I, who is God, and what is our relationship? What do I have to do with God? What must I do? What kind of relationship is that? So this is called Sambandha. So to understand the nature of our soul, what are we doing here? Why are we here? So all these things is called Sambandha Gyan. And then after that, there is the other two gyans, Abhidheya and Prayojana. We won't talk about that today. But the most basic knowledge is Sambandha Gyan. So he wanted to know this relationship between the soul and the super soul. So he was very determined. So what he would do, he would invite various people in that neighborhood area who he knew, and he would invite them and he will feed them and he will serve them as guests, and then he will inquire from them, would you know anything about this Sambandha Gyan? But mostly they will not really have much knowledge. They will speculate here and there, and he wasn't really entirely satisfied. But still he went on doing this. He was very expert in taking care of guests. So this is Devasham. He was able to perform all kinds of fire sacrifices. He also knew the importance of receiving guests. And by this way, by performing his daily activities, he was able to satisfy the devatas. But still, he was not happy because he wanted to know the relationship between God and himself, the soul. So after many years have passed, one day he met a yogi while traveling. So he left Pandharpur and he went on a traveling pilgrimage. And during this time, somewhere he met a yogi who was sitting cross-legged in a nearby forest and performing meditation. And there was a very peaceful aura around this yogi. So Devasham, he was very attracted to this peaceful aura, and he thought this person certainly should know what is the connection between the soul and the Paramatma. Because those who meditate, they usually meditate on the Paramatma, which is situated in the heart, right? You can see here Paramatma in the heart. So they are basically meditating internally to realize the Paramatma who's sitting with them in the heart. So he woke up this, he approached this yogi, and the yogi opened his eyes, and then he asked him, Devasham asked the yogi, can you look like you have attained complete peace? And you certainly must have attained the realization of the Paramatma. Could you tell me how I can also understand this knowledge? So when he said that, the yogi looked at him, and the yogi said, I cannot teach you as well as how Mitravan in Saupur can teach you. So you should go to Saupur and over there seek Mitravan, the goat herd, and he will be able to tell you your answer. So, and then after that, he closed his eyes and continued meditation. So that was his instruction. Go to the village of Saupur and learn from Mitravan, the goat herd. So Devasham, happy to have answer finally. So he, at least a direction. So therefore he left, and then he traveled all the way to Saupur. Now Saupur is somewhere near the Himalaya regions, somewhere near Haryana, like that. And it was very peaceful and very beautiful, the area. And when he arrived there, he found on the northern side a very beautiful forest. And the local people informed him that Mitravan, the goat herd, lived in that direction. So he entered the forest. He saw on a bank of a small river, there was a stone, some rocks. And on top of that, Mitravan was sitting. Somebody who looked like Mitravan according to the descriptions. He was sitting there very peacefully. He was just sitting and resting. And the forest wind was blowing very gently, and beautiful aroma was emanating from the nearby forest, wafting in the breeze. So everything looked very nice. So then this Devasham, the Brahmana, he approached this Mitravan, right? So the goat herd, and then near that area also, there were lots of goats. The goats were peacefully moving here and there. As he approached nearer to Mitravan, as Devasham came closer and closer to Mitravan, he was amazed to see that the goats there were also sitting next to some ferocious animals. In fact, there was a tiger or two sitting together with the goats, and both of them looked very peaceful. They were happy, and they were not, usually when there's a tiger, they will be very scared. But they were not. The tiger was also very peaceful. The goats were very peaceful. Everything was very peaceful. So he was amazed. And then Devasham approached Mitravan and sat close to him. Mitravan seemed to be almost asleep, but then he came to awake, and then he saw Devasham there, and he inquired from him, yes, welcome and everything. And then Devasham told Mitravan, I have been instructed to approach you by a yogi who told me that you will be able to answer my question. Then Mitravan said, yes, what is that question? And then Devasham said, I want to know how I can understand the relationship between the Atma and the Paramatma, and how I can attain devotion to that Paramatma. So then Mitravan heard this question. He closed his eyes in thought. Then he made up his mind and he opened his eyes. And then he told, I will tell you a story, how I became peaceful like this, how everything was so wonderful in this place. So he said, long time ago, I was in the forest nearby, and I was looking after goats as usual. And then what happened? Suddenly, a ferocious tiger came, and it was chasing after my goats. My goats were running here and there, right? They tried to save themselves. I also ran out of fear for that tiger. But from some distance, I turned back and looked, and I saw that the tiger had crossed the bank, chasing after one of my goats, and that goat was also caught. So it had nowhere to run. But as the tiger was approaching that goat, which has crossed over to that bank, suddenly an amazing thing happened. The tiger suddenly became very peaceful. The tiger lost all his anger and sat next to the goat. The goat also no longer was running in fear. It also became very peaceful. And then amazingly, suddenly the goat started speaking to the tiger. It said, oh tiger, you have attained your food. So why are you not eating the meat from my body? Why are you just leaving me and sitting next to me? So then the tiger also responded in a calm voice, my dear goat, since I have come to this place, when I crossed over this bank, suddenly all my anger and ferocity has left me, and I have no more hunger or thirst. So then the goat said, actually, I also don't know why I'm feeling so calm and fearless in front of you. Suddenly, I'm also feeling very peaceful. What can the reason be? If you know, let me know. But the tiger didn't know. He said, let us instead ask from this person who's walking towards us. So that person is Mitravan. Mitravan saw this scene and he was amazed, and he came towards, and he started walking towards them. He also crossed the river, and he came towards this goat and the tiger. So he became very astonished, and then suddenly the tiger started speaking to Mitravan and said, do you know why we suddenly feel very peaceful here? And then Mitravan, he also suddenly lost all fear for the tiger. And he thought, like, this is amazing. How is this happening? And then I don't know the reason, oh tiger, but I do notice that there is a very strange monkey which is sitting nearby on a tree. Maybe, and he seems to be trying to, he's been looking at us all the while, and he looks like as if he knows something. Maybe we should ask him, since you are able to speak. So Mitravan, the goat, and the tiger all walked towards the monkey. And then they asked, do you know why this place is like this and why we are feeling like this? Then the monkey said, listen, I will tell you a story. It is a very old story. And then you will understand why you are feeling this way. Okay. So then the monkey said, in that forest in front of you, the place where you just crossed over the bank, there is a very large temple. It's a very ancient temple. And in this temple was actually built by Vishwakarma, the architect of the Devatas. And Lord Brahma himself installed a Shivalinga. So a very large Shivalinga there. So long ago, what happened was, there was a learned Brahmana by the name of Sukama. And this Sukama had performed many austerities and lived there. So, and he had great devotion to Lord Shiva in the Shivalinga form. So daily he would bring flowers and water from the nearby river. And in this way, he would worship without fail and with great devotion, he would worship this Shivalinga deity in this temple. Right? And then he went on doing this for many, many years. And one day he had a guest who came to that temple. And this guest, he was a sage. So this sage came, and then the Sukama received the sage very nicely. And after serving the sage very nicely, he asked this sage, "O learned one, only for the reason of obtaining knowledge of Sri Krishna am I living here, performing austerities and worship. I am every day worshipping Lord Shiva, and I am asking him to reveal to me the supreme truth. And somehow Lord Shiva came in my dreams and told me that the Supreme Lord Krishna, he is the Supreme Lord, and very soon you will get some knowledge on this. There will be a person who will come and give you more knowledge on this. So, and you have come now, O sage." So in this way, he spoke to the sage. So and Sukama said, "I think my austerities, the results of my prayers, the results of my austerities are all now satisfied because you have now come." So after the sage heard this from Sukama, and how he noted how Sukama was full of submission and very humble and very determined, this sage became greatly pleased. Actually, this sage was a very great Vaishnava devotee. And immediately there was a stone nearby, and on the stone, he wrote with a piece of chalk, not chalk, I'm not sure how he wrote it, but he wrote it on the piece of stone. This is how it's described. And what he wrote over there was the second chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita. And then he instructed Sukama, "You will daily read these verses. By daily reading these verses, you will quickly attain your goal." So after speaking like this, the sage disappeared from that place, and Sukama faithfully followed the instruction of the sage. He will daily read the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, from the inscriptions on the stone. And in this way, he spent the rest of his life. And it's described that very quickly in that way, he attained complete knowledge of Sri Krishna. And what's more, he started feeling no more hunger and no more thirst. it became, and he started feeling very peaceful. So, and this is the peace that this Sukama felt within that temple as he was daily reciting the Bhagavad Gita, it spread all over the region. So that's why throughout this region, everything within this forest, which is near this temple, became very, very peaceful, and nothing in that living in that area could feel hunger or thirst. If the feeling, the response, the result of this of the feeling of this sukama is spread all towards this area. So therefore the monkey told this story, and due to his austerities and devotion, this place, anyone who visits here does not feel the pangs of hunger and thirst, and immediately attains complete peace. So that's why Mitravan, you are so peaceful. That's why tiger and is so peaceful, and that's why the goat is also so peaceful, not having any kind of fear. So in this way, Mitravan told Devasham after the monkey had finished telling the story. So Mitravan, remember this story? Mitravan was speaking to Devasham. Mitravan was telling Devasham about this. Okay. So along with the tiger, so what they did, Mitravan, together with the tiger, the monkey, and the goat, all went to the temple. And we found there written on a piece of stone the second chapter of this Bhagavad Gita. Sukama was no longer alive. This happened many, many hundreds of years ago. And in this way, they were able to, they also started reading the Gita chapter 2 daily. And in this way, they were also able to attain complete peace, and devotion started blooming in their hearts towards Lord Krishna. So Mitravan then told Devasham, "Oh Devasham, if you also start reciting the verses of the second chapter of Srimad Bhagavad Gita, you will very quickly attain the mercy of Sri Krishna. You will understand the complete peace which you will attain of attaining the Paramatma, of the super soul within your heart. And what's more, you will develop devotion towards the Lord." So in this way, Sri Vishnu concludes his story to Lakshmi Devi. "My dear Lakshmi, in this way, Devasham attained knowledge from Mitravan, and after worshipping that great soul, he returned to Pandharpur, his town, and daily recited the second chapter. He gave up his activities of fire sacrifices and all that, and he dedicated his life only towards chanting this Bhagavad Gita verses daily. Many, many times he would chant throughout the day. So, and what's more, whoever visited Pandharpur, Devasham would first recite before him the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita. And in this way, at the end of his life, Devasham attained the lotus feet of his beloved Panduranga Vittala and Rakumayi, Lord Krishna. So this is the true story narrated in the Padma Purana. And in this way, Lord Vishnu says, "My dear Lakshmi, these are the glories of the second chapter of Srimad Bhagavad Gita." So now let us try to understand the lessons we have heard from this story. So we have many, many characters here. We have the tiger, the goat, the monkey, Devasham, and then Mitravan, right? And then the yogi who pointed to the direction of Mitravan. So like that. And then there's Sukama, and then there's the sage. Okay, anyway. So first of all, we can understand how in chapter 1, if you recall, we remember how in chapter 1, the Sukarma and the parrot and the bull. So we understood how simply by reading chapter 1 Bhagavad Gita, one can get safety from hell. One will never enter into the hellish regions, or one will not take lower births. So that was the glory of chapter 1, how his sins were removed. So having sins removed is one thing, but ultimately we want to attain peace. So by reading chapter 2, one is able to not only remove our sins, one is able to also attain peace. And if we study carefully the chapter 2, we will see how chapter 2 is talking all about the soul, the knowledge of the soul. So we can understand that we are actually not this body, that we are eternal. So first of all, if someone tells us we are eternal, we are not temporary, we are eternal, so that will give great peace, isn't it? Especially, when loved ones pass away, it's very soothing to understand that they go on, right? It's not that they are finished. So that is very peaceful, that kind of knowledge. So this is the knowledge of Atma Tattva, knowledge of the soul. So chapter 2 is all about Atma Tattva, right? And we also saw how the yogi, though he was trying to attain Paramatma through the very difficult process of meditation, controlling his breath, sitting in the posture for hours and days, stopping his senses, not eating, fasting, and all these things like that. So this meditative process, though he was doing it so difficult, right? But he pointed towards Mitravan. We saw what Mitravan was doing. Mitravan wasn't doing difficult postures like this yogi. He was just a goat herd. But he was able to attain the same type of peace which this yogi was able to attain. But this yogi did not attain it through Bhagavad Gita. He attained it through, he didn't attain it through devotion or bhakti. He attained it through mystic yoga process, which is not an easy process. But Mitravan was easily able to attain that same conclusion. So this is a very important point also. So the bhakti path is much easier and gives you the same conclusion in the end. And on top of that, it brings you beyond, because bhakti path can bring us to the Bhagavan realization directly. Remember, there are 3 different realizations. There is the Brahman realization, Paramatma realization, and the Bhagavan realization. So Brahman is just the first level. Higher level is Paramatma. To realize, first level is Brahman. Everything, everywhere is spiritual. Everything is godly. Everything is divine. Everything is eternal. That is Brahman realization. But higher than that is Paramatma realization. To understand that all godliness, all saintliness, all wonderfulness, all eternity, all glories ultimately come from a person, Paramatma. It has a source. The light has a source, and that is Paramatma. The expansion of the Lord in every living entity's heart. So that's Paramatma realization. But even higher than the Paramatma realization is the Bhagavan realization. To understand this Paramatma, these many Paramatmas in each and every living entity's hearts, they are all ultimately coming from one single personality, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Bhagavan. And this is just an expansion. But he is the original Supreme Personality. Paramatma doesn't do anything. He just sits there and witnesses and allows, that's all. Whereas Bhagavan is full of leelas, pastimes. He performs many pastimes, and his business is simply to enjoy everything. So that's Bhagavan realization, the highest realization, which is given by Bhakti. So we can also understand how the realization of the soul, it can give us complete peace. Why it can give us complete peace? Because we can understand that we are not this body. Why we are miserable? Because we sometimes think that we have relationship with this body, that this is my situation, this is my problems, these are my family, these are my kin and everything. Yes, that's temporary. But we must understand it's just like a drama, isn't it? In a movie, right? An actor may go through different scenes. So one scene is a happy scene, another scene is a sad scene. So as the actor is going through the happy scene or the sad scene, he may look like as if he's happy, and then he may look like as if he's suffering and miserable. And that would be true if the actor forgot that he was simply acting. If the actor really got into his role and he completely, just like how we dream. When we go to sleep at night, we dream, and sometimes we have bad dreams, sometimes we have good dreams. So when we have bad dreams, aren't we suffering in our dream? Right? We are imagine a horror dream or something like that. We are running away, and suddenly when we wake up, we feel so relieved. It was all just a dream, thank goodness. So that's because we forgot that we are not really going through that. That dream is just an illusion. It's not real. The real us is actually sleeping on that bed. We are not really going through that, whatever that we are thinking that's going through in our dream. If we realize that, then we will not suffer in our dream, isn't it? We will not be suffering for the bad dreams or whatever it is, because we know I'm just dreaming. This is just, it's not true. But usually we don't realize that in our dreams. So if we realize that, wouldn't it give us peace within that dream? If we know that this is not real, all this is not real, I'm just going through a scene, that's it. I just need to do my scene, and I'm separate. So the same way, we have to understand in this life, this body that we have got, it's just temporary. It's just one of the many, many bodies we have got in many, many lifetimes. Just like one of the many, many scenes the actor has gone throughout the entire movie. So if we can realize this knowledge, if we can really realize this knowledge, then we will get peace. We will no longer see dualities. We will no longer see enemy, friend. We will see everything in that perspective, because we are simply acting within this body. So that's why chapter 2 is talking about these topics. So therefore, this story is related to that. And what else we can understand? We can also understand that Lord Shiva's ultimate mercy to a devotee is to guide him towards the Supreme Lord. So one may worship Devatas, one may worship even Lord Shiva. And usually Devata worship is mostly a business deal, right? So people will try to, okay, I worship you, I'll do this for you, please can you do something back in return? So Devata worship is usually in that direction. But ultimate purpose is not simply to get the necessities of life. It's not that, oh, I just need this, I need a good family, I need a good job, I need this. That's just temporary. The Devatas cannot solve our ultimate problem. But if we really worship them and say that, please guide me towards the right, like how Devasham, Devasham wanted to understand the purity, the connection between the Supreme Lord and the soul. So in the same way, Sukama also wanted the same thing. He prayed to Lord Shiva, the Shivalinga, and Lord Shiva directed him to this guru, this sage, who was able to give him the knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita, which connects him to the Supreme Lord Krishna. So this is the ultimate mercy of the Devatas. So Lord Shiva is known also as Vaishnavanam Yata Shambhu. Shambhu is another name for Lord Shiva, and he's known as Vaishnavanam Yata Shambhu. The greatest of all Vaishnavas is Lord Shiva, Shambhu. So that in that way, Lord Shiva is very happy to direct one towards the worship of the Supreme Lord. And we can also understand from this story how submissive inquiry is very important. Just like how Sukama inquired in a very humble, submissive manner, in a service attitude manner. In this way, he was able to please his guru, and in that way, the knowledge flows through. So that is the right attitude to take when it comes to understanding spiritual life. And we can also understand that recitation of the Gita purifies from within and without. Not only Sukama became purified, the entire area around that place also becomes purified. So wherever there is Bhagavad Gita, wherever Bhagavad Gita is being read and chanted, not only the reader and the chanter and the owner of the Bhagavad Gita benefits, the entire area, the house, the persons, the people living in that area also benefit. So in fact, it said that there's a certain radius kilometer, one kilometer radius or something like that. Anyone who dies in that area where there's a Bhagavad Gita, right, then it's a very wonderful thing. They do not go to hell and they don't take lower life forms. So they are saved from that. So in this way, it is very, very auspicious to not only purchase the Bhagavad Gita and keep it at the house, but to also to read it every day. So that is Shravanam and Kirtanam. By doing that, we purify our sins, we remove all our sins, we purify our heart so that we no longer desire sinful things. And on top of that, it puts in the right desire, the desire for bhakti towards the Supreme Lord. And that is what ultimately is going to bring us out of this material creation. Okay, so that is basically the glory of chapter 2 from the Gita Mahatmya. So those are the lessons learned from there. So Lord Shiva then tells Parvati at the end of the story, anyone who recites or who hears or studies the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita will very easily attain peace and attain the lotus feet of Sri Krishna. So very nice. So Shruti Phalan. Shruti Phalan means fruit. So what's the fruit of this hearing? So this is the fruit. So chapter 2, so now I will just quickly summarize what the chapter 2 is all about. So one thing is to simply by even reciting like a parrot, one gets benefit. But even more so, the benefit is there if one can understand the instructions of the Bhagavad Gita. And even greater benefit one gets if one starts to practice the instruction, one starts to follow the instructions given in the Bhagavad Gita. So like that, right? So, and what to speak of someone who does this with great faith, devotion daily. So chapter 2 is called Contents of the Gita Summarized, or Sankhya Yoga. Sankhya Yoga is to tell the difference between matter and spirit. But before he goes into this topic of matter and spirit and all that, Krishna will answer some of the questions Arjuna has asked. And then, chapter 2, if you remember chapter 1, Krishna will bring Arjuna to the center of the battlefield. And then Arjuna will see all the people arranged ready to fight him, and he will get very upset. And then he will tell Krishna, I don't want to fight. I'm feeling so miserable. How can I fight and everything? So, and then he'll give, on top of that, he'll give many reasons. He will try to justify why he doesn't want to fight. So he gave 6 reasons, right? Says D, compassion. He says, why should I kill them? They're going to die. And then he will tell them, he will give the reason of, what's the point I do all this? I kill them all. I cannot enjoy the kingdom. Everything will be tainted with blood, right? So no enjoyment. E. And then S says D. S is stands for sin, right? You're asking me to kill the father figure, grandfather figure, my own family members. So he thought he will go through sin. And then destruction of family dynasty. This war will only kill so many people. And then so many families will be left without father. And then when there's no father to protect the family, then there is no tradition. Family traditions are no longer upheld. And then in this way, the ladies are unprotected, and then they will be exploited. And then when they are exploited, there will be unwanted progeny, children, and this will create hellish situation to this world. More and more dharma will be destroyed. So it becomes a cyclic loop. So like that, Arjuna will give all his reasons. So, but then, and finally he will say, yet at the same time, I know that this is dharmic war. I should fight them, but still I cannot. I don't know what to do now. So indecision. So like that, he will tell. And after hearing all these reasons, Krishna will tell Arjuna in chapter 2, he doesn't accept all the reasons. It's interesting, Krishna doesn't accept the reasons Arjuna gives. So he says here, and what he says, Kutastva kashmalam idam. Where from these impurities have come upon you? Kashmalam means impurities. Kutas, where from? Twa, unto you, Kashmalam, all these impurities, idam, have come from. And then he says, Krishna will tell Arjuna, what you are saying is fit for one who is anarya. Anarya means one who doesn't understand the higher goal. One is talking about something at the lower level. He doesn't understand the main goal. So such a person is called anarya. The opposite of anarya is arya or aryan, right? Aryan means one who knows the goal of life. And anaryan is one who doesn't know the goal of life and who's simply acting on the bodily platform on mundane morality without understanding what that morality is meant to achieve. So that is the difference between Aryan and Anaryan. So he says, they are not at all befitting a man who knows the value of life. They lead not to higher planets, but to infamy. So lots of good reputation. So reputation is very important because, you know, one of the acharyas have mentioned that when even great kings, even great personalities, they have so many things in their possession, but when they die, all this possession is gone. But even their body is gone, their family is gone, but what remains is their reputation. People will still talk about their character. Even 5,000 years now, people are still talking about the character of Yudhishthira Maharaj. You know, people are still talking about Lord Ramachandra. So the reputation still comes all the way. So it's therefore the acharyas explain reputation is more important than anything else. So to understand that good reputation, one is better, one performs good dharma for the sake of good reputation, because this reputation can last forever. It can last for a very long time, much longer compared to the body or anything else that we may leave behind. So therefore, fame should be at the aim of life, and even if one becomes poverty-stricken for the sake of a good reputation, that is not a loss. So like that, the acharyas explain. So, but still, what is this good reputation all about? That we need to know. So it's better to be known as a great devotee, someone who has, you know, when somebody passes away, usually what do we glorify that person? So we will try to glorify that person in connection with some devotional activity they have done with the with regards to the Supreme Lord. You know, usually we will say, oh, you know, my grandfather, he passed away, he used to always study the Bhagavad Gita, like that we will say, or he used to fast for Ekadasis, like that we will say. And then, so these are some things which are going to be very tangible. Okay, anyway, so then after that, after Krishna denounces Arjuna's reasons, then Arjuna becomes confused. Yes, I know what you're saying is true, but still my heart is breaking. I cannot bring myself to do this. So, and he admits that he is weak. Though Dharma is very clear, but because of sentiment, he has become weak and he is not able to uphold his Dharma. So therefore he says, Karpanya dosho pahata. I have now lost my composure and I have been covered with miserly weakness. Why miserly? Because I no longer am using my capability to uphold the true goal of life, which is Dharma. Instead, I am simply wallowing over some sentimentality. So this is, it's difficult. I cannot handle it. So what is the solution for this? Now, we all go through this problem in life also. Many times, we know what is right, but at the same time, the situation becomes very complicated, and out of sentiment, we may become confused. Oh, I'm not sure which is the right thing to do, or should I do this, should I do that? What is real dharma? Sometimes we become confused. What is dharma? Because in Kali Yuga, very frequently dharma will look like adharma and adharma will look like dharma. So it's not easy to understand unless one sees with the eyes of scripture, or one is very well versed in these aspects. So therefore, what to do in this confused situation? So Arjuna shows the entire human race what to do in such a solution, or in such a situation. This verse is a very famous verse. Want to say loudly?
Karpanya dosha pahata swabhava pracham nitam dharma sammoda chetaha yad shreyasham nishchitam bruhitanme sisyaste hamsadimam tvam prapannam.
Okay, thank you. So this verse is very famous verse. And why it's famous? Because this is the verse where where Arjuna surrenders to Krishna and accepts Krishna as his guru, spiritual master. So that is the duty of every human being. Every human being should understand that he needs to understand the higher goal of life. And in such situations, he needs to accept a spiritual master and learn from them what is the thing that needs to be done, what should not be done, and what is his goal of life. So all these things he needs to understand clearly. So Arjuna says here, now I'm confused. He admits. So that's very important. The first thing to do is to admit, because if we don't even admit, then there's no question about asking for instructions. So one has to admit that one's understanding is limited, that one's information, or it's not really there. So then after admitting it, he surrenders and says, now I am your disciple and a soul surrendered unto you. So one has to surrender unto that guru. No arguing, nothing like that. One surrenders and then accepts instruction. So this is the path of spiritual life. It has to go through this way for us to understand the spiritual knowledge properly. This is enjoined by all the scriptures in the Vedas. So why is like that? Because in Kali Yuga especially, very easily people can misunderstand what is given. They do not read everything. They do not understand the entire concept, because the Vedic knowledge has many instructions. They cover so many topics. So some people only specialize in some topics of the Vedic literatures, and by doing that, they miss out the bigger picture. They don't realize what is the goal behind these other things. So that is the ultimate goal. So that's the reason one needs to follow the instruction of a guru. Just like when we are sick, we need to see the doctor. We cannot take prescription medicines on our own, because we do not know which one directly exactly we should take, which one we should not take, when to take, how long to take. So in this way, the guru is like that doctor. He is able to expertly understand the condition of his disciple and accordingly give the right instruction. He knows what fruit to pick from the Vedas and to give the right fruit or the right medicine to that disciple, so that the disciple knows he can ultimately attain his purpose. So after Arjuna accepts Krishna as his guru only, then Krishna begins to give instruction to Arjuna. So the first thing Krishna gives Arjuna is chastisement. So that's what Guru first does, right? He tests you. So then he tells Arjuna, oh Arjuna, you're speaking. He's testing the commitment of Arjuna. Okay, you have said that you want to surrender to me and everything, but let me see. Can you handle my test? So he'll say, while speaking learned words, you are mourning for that which is not worthy of grief. Those who are wise lament neither for the living nor for the dead. So he's telling Arjuna, you are speaking great philosophy just now. You're telling me so many reasons. You gave me 6 reasons why you shouldn't fight and everything. So are you sure? So, and then at the same time, you're acting in this way, in an anarya way. So after saying that, but Krishna accepted Arjuna and he gives his first instruction. Those who are wise lament neither for the living nor for the dead. So he tells Arjuna, the who are the persons who are wise. So he's giving the hint. The first thing you need to understand is whether one is living or one is dead is one thing. But we need to understand the difference between life and death, the difference between soul and matter. So then you can understand what is what and you will not grieve. So this knowledge is called Sankhya Yoga. So therefore chapter 2 comes, Sankhya Yoga. So all this is there, and Krishna begins to give Atma Tattva. So in Sankhya Yoga, Sankhya means science of discrimination. To understand what is this, what is that, what is this is not that, that is not this. That means to understand, to separate, to classify. So that is Sankhya. So one of the things which is classified in Sankhya is Atma Tattva, or knowledge of the soul, Atma. So in Atma Tattva, Krishna, here I'm just summarizing the entire chapter 2 on the Atma Tattva aspect. So first, Krishna says, first you need to understand that when you die, when the body dies, you don't die. You are eternal. The body dies, just like we change clothes. He gives many examples, just like how we change clothes. When we change clothes, the clothes is gone, but we use a different clothes. So like that, we go through life. But first we need to know that who are you? You are not the body. We are the Atma, which lives inside the body. So the body is like a temple, and the Atma lives inside that temple. And what is the nature of this Atma? The nature of this Atma is, first of all, it is eternal. Now, what in this material world is eternal? Nothing is eternal, isn't it? Everything is temporary. So everything in this material world is matter. So matter is temporary, soul is eternal. That means soul is not matter, soul is spirit. So that's the difference. So there is spirit and there is matter. And there is Atma and there is Sarira. Atma is soul, Sarira means body. Okay, so the soul is eternal without beginning. It wasn't created at any one point of time. It was always there, eternally. And it will always continue to exist eternally. So where's the evidence for this? So the verses I've put here, these are the verses from the Bhagavad Gita. We have already covered those in detail in level 1. So I'm just summarizing it here for us in this table. 220, 224, 1320, 216. So all this talks about the nature of the Atma, which is eternal. And how it contrasts the nature of the body. The body has a beginning and an end, just like all matter. What else? The soul is eternal. Okay, eternal. But what else? The soul is also eternally the same. It doesn't change. It's immutable. So we may change bodies, just like You know, when we are born, we have a baby body, and then the baby body suddenly becomes a toddler body, and then the toddler body becomes an adult body, and then the adult body becomes an old person body, and then that person also dies, becomes a skeleton body. So like that, and then it continues, and then the soul may go to another body after that, which will look different. So, but the soul itself, though it changes bodies, changes clothes, but it doesn't, but it itself doesn't change. So the soul is eternally the same, never changes. It is immutable, cannot change. It not only is immutable, it is unbreakable. The soul cannot splint, it cannot be splintered. So, you know, in Harry Potter movie, they will say the soul has been broken into 7 pieces. So, yeah, so it doesn't work that way. The soul cannot be broken, cannot be fractured. It is unbreakable. So, where's the evidence? Given in verse 216. Not only that, some people will also say, oh, we can all just join and merge to become one super soul. So all the many souls can all merge to become one super soul. No, it doesn't work that way also. So the soul is insoluble. It doesn't dissolve together to form. So that's the 224 verse. So it doesn't change. It is, whereas the body, that changes. It constantly changes, right? And the soul is what is called spirit. So that is the beginning for us to understand what is spirit. And everything else other than the soul is matter, material. So soul is Atma. Atma is not made out of the material elements. What are the material elements? The most gross, the gross material elements, Panchabhuta, are earth, water, fire, air, and ether. So those are gross. And then there are subtle, more subtle material elements also, which we cannot see, like mind, intelligence, and ego, ahamkara. So these things are subtle, cannot see. The modern scientists, they haven't discovered, they have begun to discover the mind, you know, ESP, extrasensory perception and all that, sixth sense and all that. But that is just the first level of the subtle mind, intelligence, and ego. These are elements. And beyond that, there is also other types of elements. So it's very subtle. So manipulation of these subtle elements is what creates, you know, like magic and all these things, certain powers, which, yeah, so but that is material, it's not spiritual. Sometimes people think, oh, this person can perform certain magic or whatever, and they think it's spiritual. Actually, it's not, it's material. Anyone who understands these laws of this subtle body, subtle elements, and who can manipulate them, they can also perform this. So that's how certain yogis, by performing certain kinds of meditation and all, they control the chakra within their body. They are able to manipulate these elements and perform certain miracles. They can rise, they can float, you know, they are called siddhis or powers. And these are material, they are not spiritual. They are within this material world only. They do not cross over to the spiritual world. The soul alone is spiritual, and it's made up of the same material of which God is made out of. That's why it's called spiritual. And then what else is the nature of the soul? Very important point. The nature of the soul is, it's two things. It is individual and it is conscious. So first is individual. So never was there a time I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings. And never will any of us in the future cease to be. So we are eternally individual. We never once also merge into one super soul or something. Even if we so-called merge, we are individual, just like light. You know, light is made out of photons. Every photon is individual, but together it looks like a combined light. But actually, they are individual photons. So in the same way, the soul is eternally individual, never merges. Whereas the body is, and then what else is the nature of the soul? The nature of the soul, it is conscious. Where do our consciousness come from? What's the difference between a dead body and a live body? It is the consciousness. So that's the symptom of the soul, right? So, and the soul is indestructible. There is nothing that can harm or hurt or kill the soul. You know, sometimes in modern literature, we find many stories like this, where the soul is killed or the soul is harmed, but there is nothing that can harm the soul. So it is mentioned in the verses 220, so many verses here, 220, 23, 24, 17, 30, they all repeat in different ways how the soul is indestructible. It cannot be affected by matter. Neither earth, water, air, fire, ether, or any of the subtle elements within the material world can affect the soul, right? So therefore, it is indestructible. Whereas the body is inevitably destroyed. So this is all Atma Tattva, knowledge about the difference between body and soul, also known as Sankhya. And the soul is the doer, not the body. So the soul desires and the body acts according to the desire of the soul. So the body is known as yantra. Yantra means machine. So just like how we see the aeroplane is flying, but if we look inside the aeroplane may fly in different ways, but actually the aeroplane is being controlled by a pilot. So the pilot is like the soul sitting inside the body, which is like the aeroplane. Here's another example. A person may move his hand using some machinery, and the robot, which is remotely controlled, also moves his hand. So actually, the man is the one who's moving the hand, not the robot. The robot is simply mimicking the action. So the soul controls the body, just like a machine. And therefore, we remember in level 1, we talked about the story, how the soul is trapped within this cage, just like how the parrot is trapped within the cage. And this old lady forgets to feed the parrot. So the old lady takes care of the cage very nicely. The cage is swept, very nicely cleaned, golden painted, colored cage and everything. So, but the soul is left to starve. The parrot is left to starve. So in the same way, people nowadays in modern life, they are very materialistic. They are very much into taking care of their material needs of their body and the extension of their bodies. But they do not have time, or they do not care to understand anything about the spirit, which is actually working this body. So in this way, they go on with their life and continue taking life after life after life, birth after birth after birth, and going through the various karma, both good karma and bad karma, sometimes suffering and then saying, oh, why God doing this to me? And they don't realize that this is actually their own reasons, their own reactions. So, but one who is awake to all this knowledge, he would be, how to get out of this? He would want to know more information about the soul. So these are the differences, right? And finally, Bhagavad Gita chapter 2, it gives a description about the soul. It says how the soul is inconceivable. Inconceivable means we cannot understand it completely, because the soul is not something which we can see, which we can taste, which we can hear. No, it is beyond our understanding in experience. We cannot experience directly the soul. So it is inconceivable and it is amazing, because it is part and parcel of God. So it's not God. We are not God. The soul is not God, but it is godly. We are not God, but we are divine, part and parcel of God, because we are made up of the same material, right? Spiritual, spirit, part of God. Whereas the body is gross. So in this way, Bhagavad Gita concludes. At the end, after describing all this, it tells Arjuna, therefore, since the Atma is indestructible, and since the body is always destructible, going to die anyway, therefore you should not lament. Why you should lament? Because it's going to happen anyway. The body is going to be destroyed anyway, whether you like it or you don't. So, and here you have your duty, your dharma to perform. So therefore, you should not let that come in between. And so death is nothing but what? Death is simply the change of the soul from one body to another. This is given in the verse 213, right? Dehinosmin yata dehe kaumaram yaumaram jara. So therefore, just like how if a person is drowning in the ocean, when you want to save that person, right? Let's say while we are saving that person who is drowning, his coat, his expensive coat comes off and drifts into the ocean. You're not able to save the coat, but you are able to save the person. So then nobody is worried about the coat, right? The person is saved, they're happy. So in the same way, it is the Atma which we should worry about, not the body. So if the body is killed in the sake of doing dharma, in the sake of doing one's duty, that is not a cause of lamentation or sadness or anything like that. So therefore, compassion has to be correct compassion. There should be correct compassion. So people nowadays, they are very much, compassion is right, compassion is good, but there is such a thing as compassion for the body and compassion for the soul. Both are important, but the compassion for the soul is most important. So while one wants to take care of the body and one wants to be compassionate, people are suffering, they don't have food, they don't have, they go through difficulties in life. Yes, we can help them where we can, but there are many places and people and societies who are already doing charity for the sake of the body. But very few are able to give charity to the soul. Because charity to the soul, once and for all, solves everything, all the problem, right? So one who can tell a person how to solve permanently his cycle of birth and death, that is true charity. So therefore, this knowledge, this Atma Jnana, this knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita is the real charity which is necessary, which is so necessary for the entire living entities, so that they can break this cycle of birth and death and once and for all solve all their problems of life. Solve the problems of birth, death, disease, old age, good karma, bad karma, all of this is once and for all removed, if one can simply understand this point. So in this way, Krishna quickly concludes. So one who has taken his birth is sure to die, and after that one is sure to take birth again. Therefore, Krishna is telling Arjuna, so don't be disturbed in the discharge of your duty. You should not lament. So it should not come in between your duty, because duty is more important. Because if you do not do your duty, you are performing sin. That is where you will get sin, not for fighting, because you are fighting for the cause of dharma, and dharma needs to be upheld, and you are a Kshatriya. If a Kshatriya doesn't protect dharma, then who will protect dharma? So if a Kshatriya comes and says that I'm not going to fight because I feel sentimental, then you are performing sin, because you have been trained as a Kshatriya and people are depending on you as a Kshatriya to protect dharma. And if you yourself speak like that, then definitely you will get sin. Whereas if you kill people in the name of dharma, for the protection of dharma, that is not sin, because number one, you are Kshatriya. Kshatriyas are allowed to kill for the sake of dharma, right? And that is not real sin. So therefore, you have misunderstood dharma to be adharma and adharma to be dharma out of sentiment, due to illusion. So in this way, Krishna will correct Arjuna's understanding. And then to give a basis for his understanding, that's why he talks about Atma Tattva. So then he says, even if you think you are going to kill the body, don't you understand that you are the soul and all these people are the soul and the soul can never be killed? They are simply going to move on to a younger body. People like Bhishma, Drona, they will attain the heavenly planets. So you have nothing to worry about, nothing to grieve about. So that's what Krishna will tell Arjuna. So after that, so these are all the topics which have been covered. Then Krishna will talk about very briefly. So that's why this chapter is also known as Contents of the Gita Summarized, because Krishna will talk about all the entire chapters very briefly here and there. He will talk about, he will say how duty is more important. And then after that, he will say, do your duty, but don't worry about the fruits, the results. Simply do your duty for the sake of Dharma alone, or for the sake of me. In the end, he will, at the end, he will say, do it for me. So that is even higher. That will be the last. So therefore, he talks about Karma Yoga very briefly. He talks about Jnana Yoga very briefly. And in the end, he talks about, ultimately, he concludes, ultimately, you know, Arjuna, just do it for me. Don't worry about everything else. So that is Bhakti Yoga, the highest purpose. And then he will tell Arjuna what you will get if you do it for me. He will talk about prayojan. Prayojan means the goal, the ultimate goal. What you will get by doing this. So this is all topics. It's a very long chapter. Chapter 2 is the second longest chapter in the Bhagavad Gita. So therefore, we can read it again, or you can go through the videos for level 1, where we have gone through each part of this chapter 2. So basically, to summarize, the lessons are misplaced compassion versus dharma duties. So this is one of the more important points. We have to understand where we have to understand that for the sake of dharma, one cannot misplace compassion. Just like how we talked about, you know, the body, charity for the body and charity for the soul, like that. And then how we should learn to tolerate the dualities while discharging our duties. We should not worry so much about happiness or distress while trying to execute our dharma. So it should not be a consideration. We should anyway do it, because that will bring us to a higher level. And ultimately, we should do it for the sake of God. So that leads us to transcendence. And that brings us to yoga. How to, that opens the way towards going out of this cycle of birth and death. Okay, so now it is, oops, 9:20. I overshot my time. So I don't think I have time to talk about the 4 pillars of religiosity or dharma. I will probably speak of this on the next session. So we'd like to end here. Is there any questions? Anything, Mataji, you want to say? I think you are the only one joining us today. So if I hope it's okay if there's any questions or anything. Otherwise, if there's nothing, that's also fine. Okay. Right. So if there's nothing further to ask, if it's clear, then thank you very much for joining me. So I will see you all again. See you again next session. Will be next Tuesday. Okay. So Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Bhagavad Gita ki jai, Sri Bhagavan Krishna ki jai. Hare Krishna.